very noble king. Now this king, he was rich, he was handsome, and he was very wise. He had everything you could need, and his kingdom was very peaceful.
But he was also got very worried. He worried about money, his security, health, and all his people.
Now, one day, all this worrying got too much for the king, and he wanted to make sure that the people were having the same worries as him, and were the same as him. So,
he took off all his royal robes and he dressed as a beggar, so no one could recognise him. And he went down to the market.
he listened to people's conversations. He heard people worrying about the same things as him, the economy, their safety, their health, everything. He was very relieved.
Satisfied, he went back up to his castle. But just as he was going up, he heard something.
There was some singing coming from a house.
Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
The king wandered over to his house, and he knocked on the door. A man opened the door, and the king looked in. It was a very simple house. There was some bread on the table. The king asked,
As I am a humble beggar, may I come in and share your food?
The man did so willingly, and let the king in, thinking he was a beggar, and shared his food with him. Then the king asked,
Why are you so happy?
the man explained that he was a shoemaker, and he fixed enough shoes in that day to earn his money and buy the bread, and that was all that he needed.
So, the king left and went back up to his castle. But he wanted to teach his man a lesson, as he wanted him to have the same worries as him.
The following day, the man walked out into the market, where a guard announced,
Shoemaking has been banned. Anyone who tries to do so shall be executed.
The man was very confused. Shoemaking was the only thing that he knew how to do. So, he wandered down into the market looking for something to do, where he saw an old woman washing some windows. She looked like she was struggling, as she had a strain on her face. So he asked,
Would you like some help?
The woman accepted the help and gave him a bucket and a sponge, and he got to work.
He washed all the windows in the market, and at the end of the day, he went up to the woman and gave back his bucket and sponge.
The woman paid him in bread and wine, and the man was very thankful.
As you can tell, the king wanted to come down and see the man to see if his plan had worked. And as he was approaching the house, he heard, Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
The king, was very confused. He went and knocked on the door. Once again, the man opened the door, and the king looked in to see bread and wine on the table.
They shared the meal once more, and the king went on to ask, How did you get all this food? I thought shoemaking had been banned.
The man explained that he'd been washing some windows out of the goodness of his heart, and the woman had paid him in bread and wine.
So, the king left the house once more, thinking of another plan so this man could experience the same worries as him.
The following day, the man walked into the market, where a guard announced,
Window washing has been banned. Anyone who tries to do so shall be executed.
The man was very confused. First shoemaking, now window washing. What was going on? Didn't know what to do. And suddenly, he had a thought. Ding!
His uncle always told him that there was work for a woodcutter, so
he wandered down into the forest, where he found a bunch of woodcutters, and he asked,
May I come and join you and be a woodcutter?
They accepted, and he got to work as a woodcutter.
He worked all day long, and by the end of the day, he had enough money to buy
bread, wine, and cheese.
So, he went home and laid it on the table.
Then, the king came down to see whether the man, this time, was worrying.
But what did he hear?
Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
The king was starting to get annoyed by this point, so he knocked on the door. Once again, the man opened, and the king looked in to see bread, wine, and cheese on the table.
How did you get all his food? He asked again.
The man explained that he remembered what his uncle had said, and he'd gone down to the woods and got a job as a woodcutter to pay for all of this.
So, the king left once more, trying to think of a way to catch him out. He had one more idea, and that was going to happen the next day.
The following day, the man walked up to his job as a woodcutter. He started cutting the wood, when suddenly he was surrounded by a load of guards.
One of the guards stepped forward and pulled up another scroll. The king has demanded that you become one of the castle guards, and you should start work immediately.
The man was very confused, but he followed the guard anyway, and he went up to the castle and received his armour. He had a shield, a helmet, and a shiny, sharp sword with the royal crest on it.
He stood in front of the castle all day doing his duty, and by the end of the day, he went up to the head guard and asked for his money.
Can I have my money, please?
Ha! The guard laughed at him, as he knew you only get paid once a month, and the month had just passed.
The man was very upset. This was the first time in many years that he would go home without him having enough money to buy food.
The armour was weighing him down as he walked home, the sword bashing against his leg.
When suddenly, ding! He had an idea.
He took the sword out of its case and he shone it in the light. He realised that this sword would be worth a lot of money, so he exchanged it for a load of money.
And he carved himself a new sword out of wood that he'd got from his woodcutting days.
He used the tools from the shoemaking.
And he washed it with the sponge that he used for the cleaning windows.
So once again, the king came down to see if the plan had worked, certain that it would have.
Then what did he hear?
Nothing's gonna bring me down. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
And he knocked on the door. Once again, the man opened, and he looked in, and the man had got on the table bread, wine, cheese, and some little chocolate biscuits.
The king asked the man again, "How did you get all this food?"
The man explained to him how he had sold his sword because he was never going to use it. All he did was stand there all day, and he told the king not to tell anyone.
So he told him about the winning sword, and the king left. He knew he'd caught him out this time. He'd got a new plan.
The following day, the man went up to his job as a castle guard. He stood there when suddenly a crowd started coming over the hill.
And in front of that crowd, there was the head guard, and in front of him, he was holding a prisoner. The prisoner was thrown in front of the man, and then
The guard said,
the king has demanded that you chop this man's head off for high treason to the king.
the man was very worried. He knew his sword was made out of wood. What was he going to do? He thought for a minute,
And he fought some more.
then suddenly, ding! He had an idea. He rose his hands to the sky and said,
God, if this man is guilty, then give me the courage to chop this man's head off.
but if he is innocent, then turn my sword to wood. The man went to take out his sword, and he lifted it to the sky. It was made of wood. And a gasp from the crowd.
It's a miracle, someone shouted.
Then the crowd parted, and the king walked through, and said to the man,
I have been the beggar who's been coming to your house for the past 4 days. I've seen that you can never be brought down, and you're always happy.
so, with you by my side, I shall never worry again. I want you to be my assistant, and
Nothing's gonna bring me down.